Hey friends, it's your brother Hampton. I've recently been faced with a lot of relatively difficult, fairly complex decisions, and I want to share this framework I've adopted for making these decisions to make better decisions in case it can help you. I have it right here, and I'll walk you through it in this video, but it really hinges on the idea, the concept of getting enough experience or using your past experiences to help you make better decisions in the future. If we think of this as two very rough, broad, imperfect categories of different ways to make decisions, we have ways where we can make them slowly, deliberately, and very carefully, and others where we go very fast and try to adapt as we learn more. So if you think about you're being faced with cookies, someone can really think about which one is their favorite cookie. Like, this one is gluten-free, this one is low sugar, but it has an artificial sweetener, which I may or may not be allergic to. That's a big thing. And then there's someone who just goes in through all the cookies and goes, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, I like this one. I like this. So either one in that particular case could work depending on the individual and how socially acceptable it is to try and spit out all the cookies. But there are some decisions we can and should make very quickly, and there are others that we really do want to take our time on or even postpone if we can because we don't have enough information. And this concept of either being very planned and careful or being very agile has been studied. You may have heard the story that is sometimes presented as a study, but to my knowledge, it's just a story where two groups of students were given the assignment to make clay pots, something like that. And group A was given the assignment to make as many clay pots as possible, and group B was encouraged to take their time and make the best possible pot. And in this particular story, group A not only made more pots, but the last pots they made actually ended up being better than the students who took their time and made a single pot. The idea is they learned from the experience of trying and failing and sometimes succeeding making these pots, whereas group B deliberated, didn't have the full information, took their time to research and consult and carefully sculpt this other pot, but ultimately, even though their first pot may have been better than group A's first pot, it just didn't have enough experience and information to make a truly good one. That's the story anyway. I'm not sure if this exact study has been done, but there have been studies around this where some have shown the value of being agile like this, and others have shown that being slow, careful, and planned can also be beneficial. And really, I think it depends on the decision, right? And in this framework that I made, which is part of a book that I'm writing in a chapter called Experiential Introspection, in the section about decision making, encourages people and gives them a guide to try different experiences and learn from those experiences in a way that's still safe and healthy for us, while growing and expanding our comfort zone. The book is tentatively titled Mentally Fit. I'll let you know more about it. But in this section, this decision making flowchart that I have really hinges on the question of whether or not you know enough to make a good decision. And if you do, just go ahead and make the decision. This could be something like you're going to a restaurant that you've been many times, you really like the food, and you really like this particular order. You like the chicken sandwich. And you say, I want this chicken sandwich. You know enough information because you know the people there, you know the cooks, you know the staff, and you know you like chicken sandwiches, and you've ordered this literally hundreds of times if it's your favorite restaurant. So you have enough information to make this very small decision. It is possible that even with that information, they could mess it up. Something could be wrong with that order. They might be out of chicken. Yes, but all of that considered, you should probably just go ahead and make the decision. It's the best possible decision you can make with the current information you have. Encourages you to gradually explore different ways to get that information, starting from firsthand, moving on to secondhand, and revisiting the idea of whether or not you currently have enough information to make a good decision or whether you should put it off. So let's go through this chart and I'll give you different examples that might help you illustrate what I mean for each bubble. So if you don't have enough information to make a good decision, you can then ask yourself whether or not there's a way to try the decision without committing to it. So if we want to use food examples, I guess you can ask the restaurant if you could try their chicken sandwich. I'm not sure how applicable that is. It might depend on the culture and the country. I really wouldn't want to do that in most restaurants here. So I think a better example of this you can see through dating. Right? So whether or not to marry someone or whether or not you want to marry anyone is usually a decision. You want to think about whether or not you want to marry this person. Thankfully, we have structured our society in ways to where we don't have to jump into these life-changing decisions if we can help it. We usually want different ways to try it first. So before you marry someone, you can date them first. This has been known across thousands of years around many different cultures as generally a good idea. I know not everyone follows this, but even cultures with arranged marriages or marriages where you kind of have to marry your spouse sight unseen, when possible, they try to encourage some type of courtship so you can see if you like this person that you might have to spend the rest of your life with. This is a way to try the decision, and that will give you more information on whether or not you want to marry them or whether or not you want to get married at all. And ideally, this feedback loop of dating this person and getting more information and asking yourself if you have enough information on whether or not you want to marry them or continue dating them, eventually you can make a good decision. That is either to marry them, or you could break up, or you could just continue dating them forever. Some other examples might be trying a car before you buy it, often a good idea. Or let's say you're considering moving to a new city, maybe on a different coast, thousands of miles away. I can't really think of a good way to try a house before you buy it. I kind of wish that was a thing, but you can rent a place in that area, perhaps a short-term rental, to see if you like the town before you consider buying a house there or signing a long-term lease. When possible, I try to use some kind of trial first because it is first-hand experience. The next step really involves asking people. You can read reviews, things like that, which can be very helpful, very, very helpful if you know the person and they know you well. But because you're the one that ultimately has to live with your decision, you're usually going to be the last test of whether or not it's a good one. So when possible, you want to try it first and get the trial as close as possible. You don't want to try a Ford if you're going to buy a Honda, or vice versa. But as we mentioned, sometimes there's just no way or no time for you to get a trial experience of the decision that you're trying to make. In this case, you have to get information in a different way, and we usually have to go secondhand. So ideally, you would ask someone who really cares about you, knows you really well, and you know them very well, like a best friend, family member, maybe spouse or partner. They can give you a personalized recommendation on whether or not they think you would like this or the other. So you can ask a friend what they think about the new person you're dating, etc., which sometimes causes arguments, so just keep that in mind. Make sure you're okay if they give you their honest opinion. This also involves reading about something, watching video reviews. You can go on Reddit, read different posts about something. I personally have found for many things, reviews to not necessarily be that helpful. It really depends on the review that I'm listening to. Really, if it's more like someone I know and trust giving me a review, whether it's someone in person or even a YouTube video sometimes, if it's from a channel that I really trust about a product that I don't know much, but they know really well, and they've given me good advice in the past. That's what I try to do with unsponsored reviews. But to use Amazon as an example, their rating, their star system just hasn't really applied to me and guided me that well. I'm not sure why. Like whenever I buy the highest rated one, they have this little tag that says highest rated or not best in class, but it's like highest rated, most purchased, things like that. And that's helpful to know what other people are getting. But it usually isn't the best. It's usually like the third highest rated one, or this one that has like 3 out of 5 stars, which apparently reading the other reviews, not everyone likes, but I get it and I really like it. So I guess more qualitative reviews that go into the nuance, those are more helpful for me. So if someone says, I like this, but the cover came off really easily, that's something that helps me a little bit more and something I can keep an eye out for. But at the same time, for any major product that you buy, you can go into the 1-star section, you can go into the 5-star section, and they have very different experiences. So once again, this is why I prefer to have first-hand experiences. When possible, I just prefer to try. And if that's you and you really don't feel like this has given you enough information to make a better decision, or a little bit more, but not enough for you to be satisfied, then you may want to ask yourself what the consequences are if you make the wrong one. So just to use the example that we're currently on, if I went and bought a $15 product off Amazon, I don't know, phone case, something like that, and it turns out to be not what I want. Maybe it arrived broken and they won't allow me to return it, or maybe it's the wrong color, or maybe it arrives late, or maybe it easily breaks or doesn't have the features that it told me that it would have. I understand the value of saving money, but $15 in the US, especially with how much stuff costs nowadays, doesn't really seem like that big. It's something that we can usually live with if we make the wrong one. So I might as well make that decision. And there is a cost to making the wrong one. I'll be kind of bummed out, and I might have to order another one. And during my teenage and college years, I'd have to save up to order another one. Even now, I wouldn't want to just throw $15 away. But ultimately, not really something that has permanent, lasting consequences. However, marrying the wrong person, jumping the gun there, might lead to some serious consequences, permanent consequences. And taking the wrong job after a series of interviews could be a very serious decision. Not something that's necessarily bad, but there are consequences to potentially making the wrong decision there, so we usually want to find out more. Ordering food, to go back to our first example, I'm gonna give a story here, or tell some personal experience here. There are some people I know that take ordering food very seriously, and there's this quote that I read when I think it was in Reader's Digest, when they were interviewing fast food workers or something, and I just remember it. It said, have your pizza order ready by the time you call us. It's a pizza, not a lifetime commitment. And at the time I read that and I thought it was funny. I was like, huh, That's a good idea. I will always have my pizza order. I will have my coffee order. I will have whatever order I have, usually by the time the waiter or waitress comes to me. The point is, while that may seem like a big decision, it's usually not a permanent decision that has serious negative consequences. I know food can cost a fair amount, but choosing whether or not you want the sandwich or the pasta is usually relatively small in terms of decisions compared to the other ones we have to make during our lives. And if your decision does have high potential consequences that would be hard to reverse, then you can ask yourself whether or not more time would help you make a better decision. On a very small scale, sometimes sleeping on something can help us make a better decision. It doesn't always change our mind, and you can usually kind of feel what decision you'll make the next day, but sometimes it's good just to sleep on something just in case you feel differently the next day, or you might realize things and learn things during that time period. This can also happen in parallel with some of the things we've been discussing. While you're dating someone, while you're trying a car, you are continually asking yourself if more time will help you make that decision. More time dating someone, usually a good idea. Having another interview or asking someone else how they feel about this job, this career that you're thinking of branching into, could help you make a better decision. Most of that stuff takes time. This is a relatively fast section for me to cover because it's a relatively simple question, but I also don't want to breeze over it because there are some people who make decisions very quickly, or there have been times where I was encouraged to make decisions faster, and I wish I had taken my time a little bit more. Because this flowchart, while it's relatively small, there's not that many bubbles. That's a train in the background. I'm making the decision to keep filming. There are times, even when we're not sure why more time would help us make a better decision. This is where some self-awareness will come into play. But if you are someone who feels like you aren't always crippled with procrastination and not being able to make decisions, but you just feel like you're not entirely sure why you don't want to do this, but you just don't feel right about it. You can't explain it. I don't want to push you into doing this one way or the other, or away from doing it one way or the other, because there sometimes is something to a feeling that we can't express. It's there. I'm not saying it's just magic, but sometimes we know something in the back of our minds and we just feel hesitant about deciding because there might be something we don't know. Then you may want to consider putting it off. And sometimes you don't necessarily have a specific piece of information that comes out. It's really just you growing as a person. You know that feeling that you may sometimes have before you sleep, where you think, I'm gonna get some rest. But what about that embarrassing thing I did 10, 15 years ago? What if everyone was laughing at me back then? Darn, I didn't realize. I don't know if everyone has that, but I feel like I've seen enough memes to where I know a lot of people can relate to that. And that is just part of growing as a person, I think. Your past actions will most likely eventually make you cringe somewhat. If they never do, it might mean that you've always been perfect as a person, but it can also possibly mean that you may not be growing enough or seeing your past actions as clear as you could. It's okay to look at your past self and cringe. It means you're learning. And sometimes part of growing is realizing that we made the wrong decision back then, or the right decision back then. But from that experience, if we can put off whatever we're talking about, and just from us growing, sometimes later on, we can make a better decision just as a result of us getting more mature, learning more, and growing. And lastly, a very relevant question that's closely tied to this previous question is whether or not you actually have enough time. Because if more time would help you, but you don't have enough time, then you usually have to make the decision anyway. To use a very extreme example, if a bear is chasing you towards a cliff and you have to choose either left or right, it'd be nice if you could consult a map, ask a friend who's traveled this trail before, or walk down and walk back and see where they lead. But if you're being chased by a bear, you usually don't have that much free time, so you might just have to make the best decision you can and hope it goes well. In this case, let's say that either way you choose, you wake up safely in your bed and you realize that it was a dream about bears. Very cute, but they can also be dangerous. So that's my decision framework. At any given point, we can circle back and ask ourselves if we have enough information to make a good decision. That doesn't mean that you are 100% certain things will turn out a certain way. Once again, you could order food at your favorite restaurant and they usually get it perfect, but this time they might mess it up or they might be out of the thing that you want. But you have enough information to have reasonable confidence to make a good decision. If you do, you can make the decision. If not, you can try some of the other options. And if you've gotten this far in the video, I appreciate that. I'm sure you've realized that it may not work for everyone. While these things can apply somewhat, some things might be in different order, some of them might have to go a lot faster. So let's say a soldier or an explorer, they might have different decision-making processes and priorities than someone who's, say, a marketing executive in corporate America. The thing about whether or not you have enough information still applies, but it might apply in different orders, and there might just be a different way that you want to approach it. So just feel free to adapt this to whatever suits your process. The goal of me sharing this, I can't sell you the framework or the flowchart, it's already there. I just want to share it in case it can help other people, and it's something that's been helping me a lot this year. Sometimes in life we will make the wrong decision. And sometimes we've done all the preparation and the research and the trials to make the best decision possible, but we still ended up with some pretty gnarly bad consequences. And if that's you, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I've been through similar things, and it's really not fun. And sometimes it can feel very, very crushing. But when I'm there, I do my best to remember. I know it's hard, but I do my best to remember that the past is in the past. And I don't want to forget it. I want to use it to guide the future so I don't repeat the mistake. But it's in the past, and once I feel ready, I try to use what I've learned to create a better future for myself, for my loved ones, and for others. As they say, some we win and some we learn. Hopefully this video can help you make a better decision. Have a wonderful, beautiful day, my friend.